The United States used to be the world's dream destination. New York's skyline, California's beaches, the open roads of Route 66. For decades, millions from around the globe couldn't wait to experience it all firsthand. But now, something has changed. International travelers are turning away from the US in record numbers. And it's not because they've found somewhere better. They're afraid, they're angry, and in many cases, they just don't feel welcome anymore. From obsession to boycott, the Frenchman who said no. David Pereira was obsessed with American culture. Growing up in France, he'd watch dubbed reruns of the A-Team and Happy Days and dream about the wide-open highways of the US. He even collected vintage Mustangs and drove a 70s GMC pickup truck, the kind you'd see in old American road movies. He wasn't just a fan, he was all in. He'd visited the US nearly a dozen times, and 2 years ago, completed a stunning national parks road trip along the West Coast. This summer, he planned to fulfill a lifelong dream with his family, exploring Yellowstone. But something stopped him. He'd been following the political news out of the US for months, and the more he watched, the more uneasy he felt. Fake news on fake news on fake news, he said. It was just unbelievable. He canceled the entire trip. And for Pereira, someone who had once idolized everything American, that decision wasn't made lightly. But he's far from the only one. The chilling effect across Europe. As American headlines became increasingly tense, the unease began spreading across the Atlantic. From the UK to Germany to Finland, more travelers began questioning if visiting the US was even safe anymore, or worth the risk. One major reason? Reports of tourists being detained or denied entry, even with valid documents. Stories surfaced of people being pulled aside at the border, questioned about political views, or sent home in chains after being accused of minor infractions. Even worse, new travel updates from countries like Ireland, the Netherlands, and Canada warned that travelers could face entry issues for things like having controversial opinions or simply being transgender. Suddenly, the US wasn't just another travel destination, it felt like a gamble. Bookings collapse, and it's not just talk. That fear is now translating into real numbers. In Europe, hotel bookings for US trips are plummeting. The CEO of Accor, one of the world's largest hotel groups, revealed that summer bookings from European travelers are down a stunning 25%. Their brands include Fairmont, Novotel, and Ibis, hotels that typically thrive on overseas guests. Luxury tour operator Voyageurs du Monde said it even more bluntly. Their US bookings among wealthy French travelers dropped a colossal 20%. And they're not alone. Tour agencies across Europe are reporting a steep, sudden downturn. In 30 years, said one executive, I've never seen anything like this for any destination. It's huge. Dreams lost. Scholars and artists cancel US visits. It's not just tourists feeling the chill. Scholars, artists, and researchers, people who have long relied on travel to the US for work, are now canceling, too. British science fiction writer Farah Mendelssohn had spent 3 years planning a month-long research trip to the Pacific Northwest. She had lined up a university collaboration, a major convention, and visits with friends. But after reading about a Welsh woman who was detained in the US for 19 days, chained, questioned, and deported, Mendelssohn pulled the plug. She lost over $1,000 in non-refundable bookings. But to her, the bigger cost would have been crossing the border. As well as my own political views, she said, I don't think I want to go to America in those circumstances and put money into the American economy. Boycott USA, a global movement gains steam. For some, skipping the US isn't just a safety precaution, it's a protest. Across Europe, grassroots boycott groups are gaining traction. In Denmark alone, one Facebook group has swelled to over 95,000 members, all pledging to avoid American travel and products. Similar groups exist in the UK, Germany, Sweden, France, and Norway, and they're growing daily. Some members are canceling vacations. Others are ditching cruises, even if it means losing deposits. One traveler from Sweden, Johan Bjornsson, canceled a 2026 cruise out of Miami, saying he couldn't ignore what he was seeing anymore. It had nothing to do with politics, he said. It was just disrespectful, wrong on so many levels. That was probably the drop that made everything go over for me. This growing wave of cancellations is now hitting airlines hard. This is something we only see in war zones, not a place like the US. Even more concerning, air travel from Canada to the US fell 2%, the first year-over-year drop since the pandemic. But the real shocker? Bookings for flights from Canada to the US for April to September are down over 70%. Canada's largest airlines, Air Canada and WestJet, have already started cutting seat capacity. Meanwhile, aviation experts say even European airlines may soon be forced to follow suit, not out of politics, but simply because demand is vanishing. They're talking nonsense. Industry hits back. Despite these warning signs, U.S. officials are projecting optimism. The National Travel and Tourism Office predicts a nearly 7% increase in international arrivals this year and a 10% spike in 2026. But to many in the industry, those numbers feel disconnected. They're wrong, said Jean-François Rial, head of one of France's top tour agencies. They're talking nonsense. This kind of turnaround doesn't happen in normal situations, said Didier Arino, director of a leading French travel consulting firm. This is something we only see in war zones, not a place like the US. The United States still has the sights, the cities, the stories, but now it also has a reputation, one that's making many around the world think twice. Because at the end of the day, travel isn't just about checking a destination off a list. It's about feeling safe. It's about being welcomed. It's about trust. And for more and more international travelers, that trust is gone.